Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we are continuing our study of the Gospel of Luke. We're in Luke chapter 4. We're just going to read two verses today, Luke 4:38 and 39. And this is the healing of Simon Peter's mother. And he arose and left the synagogue and entered Simon's home. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they made request of him on her behalf. And standing over her, he rebuked the fever, and it left her, and she immediately arose and began to serve them or wait on them. Okay. Um, just two verses, but there's so much here. So this happened the day that he had cast out the demon. When that had happened, he left the synagogue. He went to Simon's house. So how does he know Simon? Well, um, Andrew introduced Simon to Jesus. We know this from John's Gospel. John chapter 1. Andrew was Simon Peter's brother and was a um, a follower of John the Baptist. And John the Baptist pointed Andrew to Jesus and called him the Lamb of God. And when Andrew spent the day with Jesus, he went and found his brother Peter first thing and said, "We have found the Messiah." So we know that Peter has been introduced to Jesus as the Messiah. But we also know that he hasn't yet become his disciple because he is called to be a disciple in the next chapter. But he has gone directly to Simon's house. Now, Jesus, as we know from John's Gospel as well, has moved his family to the area. So he may or may not have been staying with Peter, but he went, Simon, excuse me, but he went there. He's Simon now. That's his name, Simon. Jesus renames him Peter later on. But his name is Simon. Um, and he goes to his house, and his mother-in-law is sick there with a fever. They've just seen Jesus perform a miracle, so they ask, "Will you do something for her?" And Jesus does, and there's no Sturm drawing here either. It says he stood over her and rebuked the fever. It's the same word that's used for rebuking the demon. Well, it was just as simple as that. He said to the fever, "Leave," and the fever was gone. In the same way, he said to the demon, "Leave," and the demon was gone. Uh, that's the kind of power he has, and it left her. She immediately rose up and began to wait on them. I don't know how many times um, I've had folks, ladies especially, say she didn't have any time to recover. They didn't give her the rest of the day off. They made her get up and start waiting on them hand and foot. What kind of a guest is Jesus in this home? That's not the point at all. The point is that things went back to normal immediately. There's no request where Jesus asks her to serve him. He's not going to hesitate to make big requests of Simon in the next verses. But her getting up and serving them, means things have gotten back to normal. That her health was fully restored, and that's how the community is going to take it. Because, as we're going to read next time, everybody's going to turn up to be healed. I want us to take just a moment to look at the way Luke tells his stories in couplets, in twos, pairs, and sometimes pairs are reflected in other pairs. And so you have twos within twos within twos sometimes in his account. Um, we talked about Jesus' rejection at Nazareth and the mob violence that followed. But what I failed to mention, and I'll go ahead and mention now, is that it is paired with the account um, of Stephen in the book of Acts. Something very similar happens to Stephen for the same reasons, and the preaching has taken the same tone. And then they face mob violence. They both face mob violence, but Stephen, of course, is stoned, and Jesus is pictured as standing when that happens. So there's that pair. But there's a smaller pair here. We had Capernaum and Nazareth coupled, compared and contrasted. And now we have the demon and Peter's mother compared and contrasted. One is a sickness, one is a possession. But Jesus, in both instances, quite easily and quite calmly addresses both. And by using the same method, by just saying leave, and the thing that was the problem had to leave. That's the power that Jesus had. Well, this is going to lead to a lot more healings, and we'll read about that next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.